Hey, 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 it is your favorite Black millennial therapist, and welcome to Let's Put It on the Table, where I'll put it on the table, which is the way I bring my Black girl experience, emotions, and faith to topics faced in life. Here, we are getting down to the nitty-gritty, validating emotions, debunking narratives, and looking at our inner selves while learning to walk in our purposes and enter into a new layer of healing. As a person who values transparency but knows how hard it is, let me build you up as I get real. So come on, get comfy, and let's put it on the table. Disclaimer: this is meant for entertainment, thought provoking, and educational purposes. This is not to replace that of professional services and does not discourage you from getting them. Everything that I say is my own opinion, my own thoughts. Thank you, and let's get into it. Okay, guys and gals, welcome back. So, in the first episode, I definitely asked a question that I'm sure had some people up in their arms, like, girl, why would you do that? But for those of you who may need to go back and listen to episode one or may need a refresher, let me tell you what the question was, okay? Well, it was a question, but it was also a statement. Because in that statement was the question: what if I told you that you actually don't understand emotions and that probably everything you confess about your feelings isn't what you actually feel? That is loaded. But I am here to talk just about that. So, in the first session, you really got to understand that I am a person who loves emotions, okay? I love talking about it. Everybody has like these taboos that they like to touch on that people don't like to talk about. For some people, it's politics. For some people, it's race. For others, it's feminism. Some people, it's sex, religion. For me, it's emotions, okay? I naturally am a little bit of a rebel. And not a rebel as in like I'm like this extremist who goes out and has like crazy behaviors, whatever you want to label as, crazy, quote unquote. But I really like to ask these questions in life that have had me kind of stumped, like, do we actually know this? And so there are so many different reasons as to why we may not actually know our emotions. And it has a lot to do with our environment, with how we were raised, what we, have as our prejudices or our stereotypes, what we feel about ourselves, what we feel about others, what we have seen. And so when we think about emotion as this, non-complex entity, we're really discrediting how deep emotions are. I just really want you to think about that. Like, sit with that. Do you actually know your emotions? And definitely in one of these upcoming episodes, there's going to be a conversation about our grab bag emotions. So, when I say emotions to you, what do you think? Some of you may have thought about some emotions that you feel like, oh, I feel sadness, or I feel happiness, or I feel anger. Um, but let's really delve into that. So, one of the ways that really dictates how we express and think about emotion has to do with our culture. So, I'll speak about me because that is what I do. I'm okay with being vulnerable. How about you? That rhymed. I'm not Dr. Seuss, but that was dope. So, you think about culture, and as a Black woman, there are some innate truths that I know just surrounding emotion, right? First, you don't want to be angry because you don't want to be the angry Black woman. Now, this is a conversation I've had with colleagues, that I've had in professional spaces, whether it's been school, church, in many different areas, where it's just like, don't call me angry. As a Black woman, just don't do it. Steer clear of it because it has such a negative connotation. But then I think about my role in the family as a therapist, right? So I'm really entwined with validating emotions and allowing people that space to express themselves. But also, as a Black woman, I've been taught you let no one see you cry, right? But I'm told to be okay with being more vulnerable than the Black man. But also, don't let him see you off your rockers, right? So you got to be good. And so this is just a few things that I've been told. And when I think about my culture as a Black woman, when I think about myself in the church, you see kind of the emotions of like crying or, being really happy. And one of those things was talking about like, confusion and, not kind of being able to reconcile what is going on as I was growing deeper in my faith. And, for me, I'm at a point now where it's like my relationship with God is tight. I can say, hey, you know what, God, I don't understand what's going on, but I trust you. So I'm just trying to layer it up because our emotions, our culture really dictate what these emotions may say. For men, it may be that you are not allowed to express vulnerability, or you may not be allowed to express sadness. And if you do, it has to be in a way that is done and people don't see it as a sadness or a weakness. So culture definitely plays a large role in our conceptualization and our thinking behind what we feel. Another thing that may play a part in why we are unaware of our emotions is just being emotionally stunted as kids. And when you ask me what I mean by that, think back to when you were really upset or something happened. How often were we told it's not a big deal? You'll get over it. I mean, I just even think about my experience being a teen and going through a breakup. One day you'll wake up and this will be okay. You in a couple of years you'll be like so and so who? And while yes, there are certain instances where I got older and it's like, oh, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. In that moment, it was bad. In that moment, it was devastating to me. In that moment, I was really hurt. And even though now I'm at a better position with the breakups, whether it was friendship breakups, school breakups, relational breakups that were romantic, in that moment, not having that capacity to really be like, no, I'm hurt, because it was kind of overlooked with it'll be okay, stunts you. And it's no shade to parents who have done it. It's no shade to parents who do it. We parent either very often the way that we have been parented or very opposite of the way that we've been parented. And I will say, I have said to my 5-year-old, it's not that deep. When for her it is. And so I've had to come back and be like, you know what? I'm sure that this is really big for you. And I apologize, to let her have these big emotions that for her and her small body are big. And so when we do this, we emotionally stunt kids. Or even the idea of telling them it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I'm your parent. These things, when we stunt our children and then have a disconnect with them emotionally and expect them to emote when they get older, is confusing. We tell kids, don't have these emotions, be seen, not heard. We don't want to hear it. And then they grow older and they're having these larger emotions and we want them to speak to us and they're not speaking to us, we as a culture are just so confused. Like, why aren't you speaking? What are you feeling? I don't know. Well, how do you not know? Because you have not allowed me the ability to express this. And that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. Don't shoot me as the messenger. These are things that I have noticed in myself that I work actively not to do, but it emotionally stunts children. Then you think about the idea of, are you safe to even allow this emotion right now? And this is a loaded concept. Think about it. Think about how much your environment dictates the thought of whether you are safe to feel this emotion. I want you to sit with that. I think about being Black in this community and, not to throw salt in wounds, but one of the things is being, emotionally heightened or very upset or exacerbated and scared when being stopped by cops. But what has that done in some spaces? I think about being that 13-year-old girl who went to her first all-white school and being so afraid of being called angry, that when something happened or when something that happened to me was wrong, I did not feel like I could safely say it, or I had to be very careful of how I expressed myself when being upset. I think about being a kid to parents and really having to code switch, emotionally code switch how I express myself when upset with them versus when I was explaining the same thing to my friends. I think about the concept of, just being a person who doesn't want to let their guard down and needs to live in a way that people don't feel upset or offended when I'm speaking because I'm a therapist or, because I am a woman. And so in this, there are clear ways in which our environment will dictate whether it's safe to emote. I wrote my thesis on Black men and hypermasculinity and how music is a way for them to be able to express themselves. And there were different study groups from some of the information and papers that I read that talked about the fact of, men not want to be called cowards or seen as weak if they were talking about things that were really plaguing them. And so the way they do it is to rap with a certain cadence and a certain dialect when spitting over a bar, like, spitting over some music, rapping, and it's done artfully in a way where it doesn't sound like a weakness because of how it's said. So we have men who are petrified of being called weak, of being called cowards, of their reputation being diminished by not being able to withhold themselves in a certain way. You have women who are okay with crying, but not okay with standing their ground for fear of being called bossy or angry. You have children who resort to, I don't know, which eventually becomes a reality of, I'm not knowing because they've been told not to express themselves. And there's a plethora of other experiences that I can't speak to, but I'm sure are coming up for you right now as you consider the fact that, wow, my environment really does dictate if I'm safe enough to express this emotion in a certain way. You look at social media and you look at celebrities or people who are held in high esteem, influencers, and depending on their age, their race, their ethnicity, their gender, their environment, the way they express themselves is either accepted or it's not. And God forbid it's not accepted, it's going to be talked about on every single platform that you can think of. You will see it so many times that you can literally regurgitate the conversation about what's happening to someone else. And so this is just another factor that shows how complex it is to really know whether you understand your emotions or not. And I mean, even if we back up just even further than that, as we're looking through this telescope of different ways of looking at emotion, the conversation around emotion is negative. Let's just face it. If you're happy, if you're joyful, if you're glad, everything's fine. As soon as you're indifferent, as soon as you're melancholy, and don't worry, there will be later episodes really debunking this. As soon as you're angry, as soon as you're sad, oh, what's wrong with you? Oh, you depressed? Oh, you bipolar? Oh, this, like, there's slurs that are made. It is almost as if you are not accepted in certain spaces and certain environments. Now, granted, everybody has a threshold where it's like, oh my gosh, I just can't deal with another negative thing because I'm not in a great space. But the conversation around emotions is just not accepted in many different ways. And so we now are in a space where it is harmful to have your emotions because you don't know who it's going to affect, what it's going to do, and the whole nine. And what's interesting is that a lot of my work at times, especially with children, is saying, It's not wrong that you felt this. Your behavior after feeling this may have been problematic, but it's not wrong that you felt certain ways. And that's important to note as we continue talking about this. So, the conversation around emotion is one that just makes it almost unavailable to have, because as soon as you go to emote, there is something that's happening in your brain to say, wait a minute, is this an okay place to do it? Is this safe to do it? What is going to happen? Who is the audience? So there's so many ways that you're emotionally code switching, which is completely my term, in order to appease the environment that you're in. And let's face it, if something is not safe, you're less likely to engage in it. You think about playing around the stove. I am sure that when you were a kid, you heard it plenty of times. Don't you play around no stove. You play with fire, you're going to get burned. It's hot. Get out the kitchen. That when you're running and you're playing hide to go seek or tag with your siblings or whoever else is in your house, as you start to run towards that stove, it's something that says, you don't go there, and you'll jet the other way. And that's the same way that we are with our emotions. Also, emotions have been made to seem just very black or white. It either is or it isn't. You're either happy or you're not. You're either sad or you're not. You're either angry or you're not. And that is complete rubbish. It's just not the case. Think about somebody who leaves your school. And this person could have been a big bully and had a lot of problems, maybe caused chaos in a class, but they were nice to you. And so when they left, while other people may have been like, yes, great, there might have been a party that was like, all right, we can get a little bit of work done, but that person wasn't that bad to me. So you think about that. Or, I even think about death. Death is such a taboo conversation where a lot of people always say it's sad. In a lot of ways, it is. But for me as a Christian woman, there is a happiness in knowing that maybe that person isn't suffering anymore. And that person has gone on to be with the Lord, should they know him. Those are my beliefs. And so, as sad as I am, and I was devastated. Like, I even think about my most recent, like, very, very hard deaths was my grandmother 2 years ago. And it was hard. I was devastated. She's my best friend. I still think about even now, like both my grandmothers were my best friend. So the fact that I can't pick up the phone and call her bothers me. But there was also this happiness in being like, my grandmother knew the Lord. So I know where she's going. She's not suffering. She's not having seizures. She's not dealing with cancer and these fleshy things that have plagued her. So there was some type of okayness and this idea of, and also this isn't terrible. I think about people who have been severely abused. It may hurt to lose that parent if it was a parent, but there also may be some relief. There also may be in that relief some discontentment because you didn't get a chance to have some type of closure. Think about relationships. Relationships are the same way. Even in a really, really bad relationship, the reason why it's hard to break away is because you got used to that person. You know what to expect. The highs are usually really high and the lows are lows, but there are dual and complex emotions that go on. And to say that one takes precedent over the other is just not the case. And so we sit here and we think about the fact that people often use different examples and explain one emotion. And that's just not the Band-Aid emotion for everything. So there's another idea, and there's so many ideas, right? But think about using a common term. What's under that? So, for example, I'm about to go out with my girlfriend. She calls me. We planning all week to go out. I'm super excited. Haven't seen her in months. Need a day to myself. Ready to eat some good food or go do something fun. And then last minute she cancels. I'm a female. My go-to is I'm gonna cry and be upset. Okay, cool. I'm upset. What's under that? Am I just upset? I literally just spoke about the fact that emotions are complex. So am I just upset? Maybe I'm disappointed because I really wanted to see her. Maybe it's a little bit of relief because it was like, oh, okay, my funds wasn't looking the way I was hoping that they were. The math wasn't mathing, but this adds up. But then maybe there's some anger because it's like, girl, I hate last minute cancellations. And then there's some sadness of like, well, wow, this is sad. Maybe I'm pissed off because this is a repeated occurring, pattern from my friend. So, as you can see, I'll go back to the original question from the first episode. What if I told you that you actually don't understand emotions and that probably everything you confess about your feelings isn't actually what you feel? And so while I shake the table, it also is to get you thinking that emotions are complex. Emotions deserve a big platform. Emotions deserve a safe platform. And they deserve the capacity and the spaces to be talked about in a complex nature. So, as we continue to move forward in this, I want you to know there's going to be some tough conversations, right? There are going to be some things where you're probably going to have to listen to it a couple of times to really grasp what I'm saying. I'm not expecting everybody to always agree. I'm not expecting people to not have conversations about it because it's supposed to be thought provoking. But it's also to say, if you have struggled in this area, if you have felt misunderstood when it comes to your emotions, if you feel like you can just not get a grasp on what's going on, this is why I am here. This is what this entire first season is about. Overall, I mean, like, I'm here to debunk narratives. I'm here to help you grow. I'm here to be vulnerable, which is something I used to struggle with because I was always told you're too vulnerable. You wear your emotions on your sleeve. But it's amazing that that very thing that was spoken out against as a negative is the very thing that God has blessed me to use to the best of my ability. But this is meant to be a space to help you to heal. There are so many of us, Black, white, Asian, whatever ethnicity, whatever race, and I'm not saying whatever as in a dismissive way, I'm saying because the list goes on, that have not worked through different sentiments, thoughts, different experiences because we've not quite had a label to put on it. We live in a world that is full of just labels and labels. And when we don't know how we feel, it's really hard to move past things. When we're not accepted for what we feel, it's hard to move past them, especially if we don't have that acceptance within ourselves. And furthermore, it's okay and necessary to admit to the fact that our feelings and our conceptualizations may change about the same thing multiple times. And that's okay. You may not know what you feel right now, and you may not know as much about emotions as you thought, and that's okay. You may have multiple feelings about what I'm saying right now, and that's okay. You may have never had a safe space anymore. A safe space before to speak about it. That's okay. This is what this is here for. So, as we are ending today, I hope that you take some time to maybe have this conversation with someone else, to maybe journal about it, to speak out loud about it, to do whatever it is that you need to do. But as always, I hope that you are safe. I am sending you all light. I am sending you all love. And I cannot wait for you to join me for episode 3 of Let's Put It on the Table, where we talk a little bit more about some cultural aspects that mitigate our emotions. See ya!